All right. Let's see if that seems to be working based on the echo that you're surely hearing now. Okay. I'm going to drop a link into the development channel of Urbit Community. This is probably not a very, what do you call? Not a very popular time. It's late for anyone on the East Coast or Europe or most places. It's middle of the day for Oceania and Asia, at least East Asia. But I think it'll be on the video on demand for like 14 days or something. I'm also trying to record it. I think that'll work as well. Looks like it will. Let me just make sure that this is great. Yeah. Cool. Hopefully this is visible. And yeah, we'll see what happens. I think I can just mute this and then unmute the site in case it wants to yell at me if something else happens. Okay. Right, so my goal is basically so there's a bunch of stuff that I have been doing related to the PKI stuff and the upcoming breach and all that, and it's basically very little of it has any coding involved, and that's driving me stir crazy. So I've been occasionally in the evenings just writing code that's not the top priority for the Tlon Corporation at any given moment. And so that's what I'm doing right now. The things that are most exciting to me are some subscription reform stuff that I've been talking with a few people about, and then third-party software distribution. In a recent email to Urbit Dev about third-party software distribution, I described how there's basically two things we're missing on an infrastructural level. One is that you need to be able to suspend and or delete apps, because we require that all active apps compile with the latest kernel, and if you install a third-party app, there's always some level of trust required, because it's running third-party code, but you need to trust them to not be malicious. If you can't uninstall an app, then you also have to trust them to provide updates to keep it up to date with the kernel forever and ever. And that's a whole nother level of trust that you probably shouldn't trust hardly anyone with that. The closest would be you can more or less trust the Tlon Corporation with that, because Urbit is still not sufficiently distinct from the Tlon Corporation that if the Tlon Corporation disappears, it's like Urbit may not survive in its current form, and so there's sort of a almost definitional. Basically there's a highly correlated risks there, where if Tlon Corporation disappears, you probably won't be using Urbit. But that's not true of third-party apps, and so you need to be able to uninstall a third-party app or suspend it in some way. Also, if you want to be able to get an update before the third-party app has been updated, then you might want to suspend it for until they get around to updating it for the kernel. And so you'd want to just like suspend it but not actually delete it. Right. Another possible use is you might want to use an unstable version. So for example, even like Klon might put out an unstable version of the core or of landscape or something that has some changes that haven't been released to mainnet, and so you just want to try them. But then later on, you want to switch back to the main, the main distribution. If there's a new app or something, you may need to, stop it basically so that you can get back to where you were at. And so all that to say, so reading the comments, Master Morzad is like, first thing I hear is Urbit in its current form may no longer exist. That's if Tlon were to disappear. But anyways, right. So you need some kind of way to be able to stop an app. But you can't just stop an app with, Control C as you would on Unix, because on Unix, the reason why you can do that is because any socket you can just, any connection you can just break, you can just disappear. Everyone assumes that you might just disappear. And so they go through their whole lifespan checking and rechecking that you exist and that, you're feeling okay. And so in Urbit, we try to avoid that because it's a much nicer experience if you don't have to check and make sure that they didn't lose their mind while you weren't looking. And so we like, in general, you can't just get rid of something. Like you can't just get rid of an app or reset it to factory settings without doing anything else. And so it seems like there's basically a few different ways that you could do this that would satisfy different invariants. One option is what I've been calling the gone option, which is to say unsubscribe from all incoming and outgoing subscriptions, and then actually delete the app, which specifically means deleting the state. And so doing this is reasonably safe, right? It's better than just deleting the state because you can, right, you unsubscribe. Like basically everyone who knew you existed, like most ongoing relationships are going to be in the form of a subscription. And so this gives them an explicit notification that subscription has ended. And if they try to resubscribe, then they'll get the same response that they would if that app didn't exist at all. And so it should basically fall into their normal, their normal patterns of use. What this doesn't get are outstanding pokes and outstanding like kernel commitments or kernel requests. So if someone has poked you, then they expect to normally get an acknowledgement, positive or negative. And if you delete this app, then you won't get it. I hope that's not a problem, basically. I think it would not be unreasonable to track outstanding pokes in the way that we do outstanding subscriptions. This has come up a couple of times where it seemed like maybe that would be a useful thing. And in particular, when we delay, whenever we get around to implementing delayed acknowledgements, we'll need some kind of tracking of this. And so it seems like that's probably the long-term answer. In the short term, I don't think it'll affect that much. I do hesitate still because, well, basically, the reason why I don't hesitate too much is because we don't have delayed acts. If we did have delayed acts, then I would hesitate more because a poke that doesn't get an acknowledgement might mean that a flow might not get an acknowledgement. And if that happens, then the flow could be stuck, which leads to sort of a general concern of basically reused ducks. If like they may try to poke you again in the future and on the same flow, Which I guess with a poke, the duct is actually determined by the sending side, so it would almost certainly be on the same duct. And if that's a stuck flow, then you have problems. Right, so there's some messiness there. A second version, or a related risk is outstanding kernel requests. If you tell the kernel, wake me up in 5 minutes, and then you deleted, then you'll get a notification in 5 minutes, which presumably will just throw away. Probably nothing that's outstanding. Will there be a problem? Yeah, I don't think there'll be anything that we can't just throw away. Even things like Clay, if you have an outstanding subscription to Clay, the nature of Clay subscriptions are that you get a response and then you ask for the next one, which is a little bit annoying sometimes, but it has some really nice features about back pressure, which is that if you send a response to someone who doesn't answer, regardless of whether that's over the network or that's you as an app, if they don't answer, they don't stay subscribed because they have to actively say, yes, I want the next version. And so you won't have this sort of permanent, there won't be a space leak in Clay due to your subscription there. There's, relevant questions of where, it might not be a bad idea for some Gall subscriptions to use that same back pressure technique. Although you don't want, regular Gall apps to have to worry about it. But that's the subscription reform stuff, which I would love to get to, and maybe I'll stream about that another time. But I think if you had basically more legible subscriptions, then you could choose on a subscription by subscription basis appropriate back pressure mechanisms, and one of those would be for anything that's relatively low volume. That's probably the right way to do it. It has a lot of nice properties. For high volume stuff, you want something more like the way Gall subscriptions work now. Anyways, that's far afield. An issue you might run into, though, without sending kernel requests is, again, reused ducts. So if if you're an app, you set a timer for a day, you get killed, and then 12 hours later, they start up another copy of the same app. That timer response will come back to the same to the app that doesn't remember starting that timer because it was a previous iteration of the app. That's not great. I think the only real answer to that is that you need it to be on a different duct. So each app gets its own duct, and any passes that it sends, any cards that it sends, come on that duct. And currently, that's just determined by primarily by its name. And so we just need to add either a counter or just a nonce. We could just add some entropy in there. That duct is stored, and so when we construct that duct, we need to put something in there so that messages from the old version of the app don't come back to haunt the new one. I think that's solvable. So that's the Gone style. And then there's two more, basically. There's doze and there's sleep. Doze is stay subscribed, resolve to state, so meaning basically call on save, and so that you become just a vase, and then you can wake it up later. This has obviously the main different property here is that you can wake it up later. You need to enqueue I don't know about all sign. Well, you need to enqueue. What do we call them? Deals and agent signs, like basically agent specific moves. Possibly you should also enqueue all kernel moves as well. For example, if you set a timer and then you doze, it should, then when you wake up, you should get that timer. The problem is, then you have moves stored in your state, which is not great. It makes for really annoying upgrading, because anytime that you change the move type in Zeus, you have to write a state adapter. We really try to avoid that. But it's not the end of the world. At least it would still be covariant. But many move changes are not, or many move type changes are, are not just supersets. It's possible that they might need to do that. We already do queue for apps that haven't started yet. This is a questionable decision, but we do queue pokes and watches and whatnot. Basically just pokes and watches. Because that's a small set that doesn't change much, it's not that bad to, we hardly ever have to write state adapters for that. We would also be getting signs potentially, but there's only a couple different signs that we would get from other agents, and so we could include those, and that should work fine. I don't know. It's hard to say whether we should queue kernel signs, but yeah. So the risks around this are that non-responsive without notifying subscriptions, like subscription clients, and servers also, but especially clients, which could be not ideal. And if don't enqueue kernel signs, might miss important things. Which is not great. Sleep is similar, except it's unsubscribe from everything and then resolve to state. Probably still queue deals and ancient signs. It's very similar to doze, except that you unsubscribe from everything. You could then start dropping stuff because you're unsubscribed. You just say, or knack. Just say, yeah, I'm not expecting to get any responses. But it's a bit of a weird state. And of course, we might miss important things. So I don't know. There's definitely risks to all these risks to all these different approaches. I think the right answer is basically you decide. The easiest one to implement is definitely gone. That one's just like, we'll unsubscribe from everything and then delete the state, and then that's it. There's no new, that's just logic. There's no new states there, right? doze and sleep are not that way so much. I think that the most important ones are probably gone and doze. I feel like it's probably either this is just I want to suspend it without doing anything, or else I want it gone altogether. The idea of like, well, I want to like unsubscribe it from everything, but maybe I might want to bring it back is, I mean, I don't know. It might be useful at some point, but if I can only implement one or two, it'd probably be just these two. It's still not super clear how to, like what guarantees basically that we can maintain, and how to basically how to write apps that can be safely dozed or goned. We should be able to make it so anything can be safely goned, more or less. Pretty close. For doze, it's harder, but we should at least be able to get to the point where anything that is that only talks to other apps, that doesn't depend on stuff happening in the kernel, can be safely dozed. And if it does talk to something in the kernel that it needs to worry about, we can come up with patterns to make that safe. Like, for example, in its on load, it could check and see, do I have, is that timer outstanding that I think is outstanding? And if not, let me set it anyways. Or same for Clay subscriptions or whatever else it might have outstanding. It's probably good in general for anything that it's has outstanding in the kernel, that it be able to look up its status in some sense. That's probably just something that we're going to need to implement at some point. And if it is implemented, then we might be able to get it formalized enough that Gall can keep track of that. And you could implement something like sleep that also goes and kills timers and kills subscriptions and kills HTTP requests or whatever. We'll see. So none of them are super satisfying. I spent a little time recently writing up the first two of them, and I'm not sure how, like, it was kind of just I wrote the code at night and didn't look over it, and so I want to review the changes that I made to see if they're sane, and then see if I can get something to work. So, a term that I've been using for deleting apps in some sense, because uninstall implies all kinds of things and suspend implies some other things. I'm just calling the generic act of turning off an app to fade an app. And so, as a generator, lets you fade as it's just it gets run as bar fade, and then send app name, and then in libhood drum, I implemented a couple things. Mainly, the generator sends a drum fade, which goes to here, goes to C fade. So the way drum works, you when you start an app, you add it to drum's internal set of started apps, and then it also has a set of it has a set of apps that it expects to be started and a set of apps that have been started. And then during the abet phase at the end, it which is here, it runs through and makes and brings us up to date. So C add it adds um, basically starts any apps that we wanted to start. C adds connects to any apps, like links to any app. So for command line applications, when you run bar link, C adds makes that happen basically. C subs does the reverse. Anything that it feels like should be unlinked, or that has been removed from the we want to be linked to these set, it removes. So I add C subit, following the same pattern to be like, okay, these are apps that I want to have turned off. This is only really going to apply to gone type fades. Using the, right. And so all that does is it says, okay, go through fir, which is the ones that are started already. And we say, if it's in Ray, then we want to keep it started so we don't do anything. But if it's not in Ray, then that means we wanted to turn it off. And so we emit a fade to Gall, a fade gone to Gall. That should be not hard coded, so that we can do other stuff besides gone, but oh well. And then we delete it from fir. C fade, of course, I've gone a little bit out of order, but C fade is what gets called from the generator, basically. And if we don't believe that it is running, then we say it's not running. If we do believe it's running, then we delete it from Ray so that in the C subit phase, it'll be stopped. We'll want to be a little bit more careful with that when we implement something other than just gone, because I don't know if drum should have a concept of suspended. It probably shouldn't. What you should probably do with the suspended one is just pass along the card and don't keep track of it. Arguably, it shouldn't keep track of the started ones either, but whatever. Oops. It's also I glossed over this generator, but it's one that we should have had a long time ago. It just takes in a note and passes it. Basically, it does what there's a bunch of generators that all they do is just send a note to a vein and don't expect any response or anything. And so this basically supersedes all those. Anyways, right. Okay. This is the corresponding, right, so yeah, keep doing that. This is what corresponds to that pass generator that I just showed you. And then in Clay, we make a few changes. Only to the, right, so basically I added a task, and that was super annoying in Clay because Clay was storing moves, but not for any real good reason. It was storing moves as a way to, as part of an earlier upgrade process. So we don't need to store those anymore. And so instead of writing a state adapter from the old move type to the new move type, I just got rid of the old moves from the state, which of course changes the state type, but won't have to do that in the future. And it's an easier state adapter to write. We basically just, go by axes to get rid of, to punch out that part of the state, and everything looks fine. If we need that back, we can, for a related, for an upgrade that needs to send moves, we can always add it back in. Okay, then Gall is where the real changes are. But here's the Zeus change. You can see there at the bottom is just we added a fade. Rest, doze, gone. Maybe rest is better than sleep because it's 4 letters. I don't know. But we added a fade task for Gall. Even the changes to Gall, you can see, are actually quite small. This mostly just implements. Actually, maybe this does only just implement the gone version. The doze stuff is probably just in my, like, it's in my working tree. It's not committed, I think. We'll see. It's certainly not here in this diff. So for implementing, so the Gall change at the bottom, you can see we get a fade task. We call mo fade. Mo fade is defined at the top there. Gall in general is split into 2 cores, mo and app. App is specific to a particular app. Mo is more generic. It's the outer core. And so we always go first into a mo arm. And so mo fade, it sets up an app core with app abed, and then it runs app fade, which is going to do the actual unsubscribing. And then after that, it needs to delete that app from our state, which is what happens in that whathep near the top of the screen. Obviously, rest and doze are not implemented. App fade is, we're now in the context of this app. We want to remove the subscriptions. And so this code is pretty much lifted from the code we use when another ship breaches. Because when another ship breaches, we need to go through each app and delete and unsubscribe on all paths that go to that ship, both inbound and outbound. So this is similar, just the predicate's different, basically. Instead of looking for their ship, we're looking at our app. And so we go through our list of outbound.watches at current agent, which is sup dot, bowl. And right, so we get that list. We get the list of inbound paths. Will list card agent path. Right, so for the outbound ones, we need to send a leave to each of them. And so that gives us this list of cards. And so we're sorry, there's actually a couple of things happening here. So, right, so for the outbound ones, we just scroll through them and leave. That's easy enough. For the inbound ones, if there are no inbound paths, we don't do anything. If there are inbound paths, we can actually do it in one move because Gall lets you kick from a whole list of paths at once. And so we just say, okay, kick from all of them. And then the last thing we do is we app ingest will agent.current agent. So what that's saying is basically, so app ingest is called anytime that we finish one of those regular app cores. So an app core, one of those regular like agent arms. So like on poke, on watch, on leave, all of those produce a list of moves and a new copy of the core. And so what we're doing is we're basically faking that. We're saying, okay, run, instead of normally this would be something from the agent. Instead of that, just produce this explicit list of cards. And the unchanged agent core. And that way basically we get to not have to rewrite any code around interpreting those cards or anything. We can just slot it into the normal path. I think that's a clean enough way to write it. And then we just return our new state. And I think that basically works. I did run that version, and it did work, at least to the point where I could delete an app and then restart it. There's now, I have not committed some changes that are more questionable, along the lines of basically trying to extend this to doze, because I think for third-party software distribution, Gone is not really gonna cut it. I mean, it could. It might be fine. It's not okay for things like, I'm running an unstable version of the core apps, and then I want to switch to the regular ones. But for a third-party app, maybe it's, better than nothing. But doze is actually a pretty decent, has a pretty decent set of trade-offs. There's some risks, but it's not too bad. It's unfortunately, I think, significantly harder to implement. You'll notice that last time we didn't have to change any state in Gall. This time we really do. So let's review these changes. There's not that many. Zeus, I just said we'll do rest later. And the rest are all in Gall. So this at the top is Gall's whole state has a bunch of yokes in it. Yokes are basically harnesses for a specific app. And so it has like the subscriptions in it, for example, and it has the agent core, which I replace with either the agent core or a vase of its state. So if it is dozing, then you just have a vase of its state. You don't have the compiled agent core, because the agent, like the source, might not compile. So all we can do is keep around its state. And then there's another part of its state that has a set of blocked moves to an app, and that used to just allow deals, which are pokes and watches. But now we add that to also allow agent signs, which would be facts, kicks, poke acts, and watch acts. The reason why we need to add this is, until now, the purpose of queuing up moves was only if that app had never been started. So if an app had never been started, then there's no way that it's going to get a subscription response or an acknowledgement, because it hasn't said anything. It hasn't been able to subscribe to anything. And so all it could get is incoming stuff. And so now it can get some, responses as well, because it may have subscribed to something and then dozed. And so we need to be able to store those as well. That's also a change to its state, so that'll need to be in our state adapter, which I don't think I have a state adapter in here, but not too hard to write one. Okay, then basically I went and looked at the various places that we have agents. If I remember right, this is where we just compiled an agent, and we're adding it to the yoke. And so instead of just agent, it's PAM-less agent, because we're in this case of the agent. There's going to be a few more of those. Let's see. So this is if we get a response. If we get a response from either another agent or from the kernel, then we expect now to get responses, potentially, even if an agent is suspended or is gone. This is something that really this handling probably should have been in the gone stuff in our previous diff, at least some of it. And so what we do is we say, okay, if we get a response for a yoke that for an app that we don't recognize, which means it's either gone or hasn't ever existed, then we print that out and drop it. If we do recognize the app, but we're in the send bar case of agent.yoke, which means we have a vase, we don't have the actual agent core, then what I'm doing right here is, so this is the sign arvo case. So this is a response from the kernel, not from another app. Then what I say is we just drop it. Questionable decision, but that's what we're doing for now. And then this case is we now are getting a sign agent, and so we want to enqueue that. We could drop it, but I think this is definitely better to enqueue. And so what we do is we say if it's dozing, so if we're in the send bar case, the right hand case of agent, then we add it to, well, we create a new queue of blocked moves by getting from blocks.state, which is a map of app name, to blocked moves. If there's nothing in it, if there is no queue of blocked moves, then we create that queue. And then we add this to that queue. This being a blocked move, which we defined up here as duct routes, and then move. It's a bar-less sign, bar because it's the right hand of an each deal sign. Add to the queue, print out that so that we have a sense of what's happening, and then add that back into blocks.state, so that we know to apply those when we do wake up, and keep going. Down here this is where we apply moves as they arrive, or sorry, not as they arrive. This is apply the queued blocked moves. That type is a bit larger now, and so the card is, it used to be that we would just slip it to ourselves. Now we still do that if it's a deal, but if it's a sign, then we huck it to ourselves through Bane. Bane has a huck mechanism where basically you can pass it a card and it'll just give it right back to you, like which is useful so that if you want to like delay something to get an answer later, you can just store it, and then when you actually want it, you can do that, and it'll be as if like and then you'll get it through, as if you just got it anew. It's a little bit non-ideal because you get it obviously from Bane instead of from, in this case, Gall is what you'd expect to get it from. But whatever. It should basically work. Okay. I think that logic is basically correct. And then mo fade we update to say with those we don't need to do anything at the mo level. In app fade we'll need to do something. I'll just look at that real quick, or maybe not, that's a little long. We'll need to do something app fade, but first of all mo handle local, which is, what is this doing? This is saying if we get a response, if we get a message if we get like a poke or a watch, we need to enqueue that, is what it's saying. And so it used to be that we would check whether whether we had a yoke for that agent, and that determined whether or not we blocked. Okay, so explain this clear. It used to be that we would check whether we have a yoke for that agent, and also check whether we have any blocked cards for that agent. If either of those were true, basically, if it's not running, if we don't have a yoke for it, or we have a queue of blocked ones, which could happen if, for example, it is running, but it's not actually responding. Like, it's running in the sense that we're trying to compile it, but it hasn't finished compiling because it's failing for whatever reason. Then we want to enqueue the move. We changed that logic to say is running okay, so running is null if we don't have this agent. Is running is null if this agent doesn't exist, or if so this is saying it's not dozing. So is running is saying that basically either the app doesn't exist at all, or it's not dozing. No, sorry. If the app doesn't exist at all, then it's nothing. So we're saying the app exists, and further, it is not dozing, like it is running. So if the app doesn't exist at all and is running, then what we actually want to do in that case, if the app exists and is running, that's what is running says, then we don't want to queue this up, so that's wrong. Yeah, that should just be like that. Whoa. That's weird. I closed my Vim session for the first time in a long time. Dang it, I must have screwed up my vimrc. If I turn off this, that'll probably... I think that should basically do it. Might have to, let's see. Also, maybe don't reload the session. Okay, that's working. Okay, then right. So if it's not running, or there are blocked moves, then enqueue. Okay. Back to where we were here. That seems correct. Okay. Then we can look at app fade, which is near the end of what's happening. The only other things that are happening is we when we construct the agent core, we have to look at p.agent, and we also just go ahead and assert that it's alive. If we get to this point where when it's not, like when it's dozing, then that's bad and something earlier was wrong. This I noticed was written weird. Well, specifically it was correct, but we have this helper for a reason, and so it's just a stylistic change. this is we're reloading an app, right? So this is the on save, and then app install calls on load. And so if we're reloading an app, this is actually not quite right. This part's right, that we're reloading an app, and so it needs to be Pamela's agent because it's an each now. But this part is not correct, because by doing this, I send it through this path that says we're going to assert that it exists already, which we don't want to have to be the case. What we actually want to do is say, if it existed already, like if it was not dozing, then run on save. If it was dozing, then just take what's in, what's in our state, that state that we saved. Where is this? 1401. Right, this is app reinstall. So here what we want to do is say if agent current agent, then this, else p.agent.current agent. I believe is what it's called. Let me make sure. No, I want where it's here. Yeah, agent.current. It should be hep dot. Yeah, cool. Right. So that's a way to get out of a dozed state, is if you reinstall the app. As written, of course, this will, like, if you change the app, it'll undoze it because it'll trigger this, which we don't actually want necessarily, not generally. So we're going to need to stop. We're going to need to end that clay subscription or something at some point. But we'll finish reviewing this. That's not valid syntax. Should be easy to grep for. What's happening here? So this is app handle result, which is where we, sorry, that is valid syntax, but it's not going to be quite the right type. Actually, with the tis dot, I think it will coerce into the right. No, you can't coerce into the right type. So this is app handle result, which is again, like it's related to app ingest, which I mentioned earlier. Like if you look at the definition of app ingest, it basically just calls app handle result and then does a few more things. App handle result takes the result of an agent, so a list of an agent invocation, so a list of moves and the new agent, and it processes those moves a little bit, turns them from Gall style moves to Arvo style moves, processes any kicks that came through, processes any new subscriptions, like by updating our outgoing subscription state. And it also stores our new agent core. And so this, so results is this each here, because it could be a result, like it could be a list of cards and the new agent, or it could be an error message if the invocation failed. And so p.result, so we checked that it's not an error message. It's not an error message, so p.result is step agent, which is list of cards, and core. Lust.that is going to be the core itself. And then what we want, which we can write verbosely as this, is we want to send Pam because we're saying that it the agent exists, right? This is obviously not a doze thing. We just ran it. But let me look at so step is equip, which find here, there are no faces on it, which is why we use lus instead of some kind of face. The pattern that I've been using everywhere else would be this. It's kind of questionable because it's pamlus lus dot. It's hard to parse. The syntax highlighter has decided that parses as though it's the beginning of an arm, and that P is the name of that arm. I think it's fine. I think it's perfectly readable for anyone who's touching this layer of the system. But it wouldn't be wrong to do this. Just annoying. Cool. Okay. Then that gets us to the end there. And the only thing then is that we skipped app fade, which I'll go ahead and look here because it's largely rewritten. Well, actually, not a lot actually has changed. It just looks like it has. App fade is now a what happens instead of an assertion that it's gone. All this got indented, and that's why it looks like it happened. But there's no other real changes there. And then in doze, all we do is we resolve the to state by running on save. And here it's barless instead of pamless because we because it's the right hand of the each. That should be all we have to do, I believe. Yeah. So then that gets us to, this is my mini to-do list that I was at. My convention is to use hep for to-dos and lus for done. And occasionally I'll add something else in, like, do I want to do it? Maybe. Okay. So the things that mainly need to happen is I do think we are queuing the deals now correctly, and we are dropping the other stuff. The thing that we don't have is we need to somehow stop trying to recompile this app. But I do feel like we can probably try and run this without that. And basically just say if yeah, we can test everything else as long as we don't restart the app. Because I think everything else is basically feature complete for as far as doze is concerned, except for the reusing ducts actually should go as something under gone that probably should be done. Just want to add a nonce there so we don't reuse them. Okay, then I'll try compiling this because I haven't written a state adapter. I need to do it. I need to make a whole new pill. Although I can just I can compile it before that, and then once it's compiling, I'll make a pill. It's just a faster cycle. Okay, Urbit 8 Zod. There's no Zod there. Oh, there. Darwin Zod. Okay, so I do have home up. Then I tend to use commands that look like this. Watch just runs a command every 2 seconds. And then rsync from whatever into whatever. Okay. It looked like it was mounted, but I guess not. I'm going to unmount work, and I'm going to mount home, because... Right, okay. So then I should be able to... I'm not sure this is the right peer. Seems to be changing the right files. Okay, the spinner doesn't spin if your window's too small, but it keeps working. Right, so my workflow here is basically I can just copy and like I can just copy stuff in and use it, like and commit, and that'll work up until it actually tries to run it. That won't work because it changed the state type. I haven't written a state adapter. And so at that point, what I'll do is use a separate desk. So there's a thread called work, so hep work, which creates a new desk from home. It just merges into there, and then it goes ahead and mounts it. And that's useful because you can compile stuff there, and it won't try to. You can commit stuff there, and it won't try to compile it, or it won't try to load it. It will try to compile its own Hoon and Zeus, but that's all it really needs. And it only compiles it really with respect to itself. And so it doesn't care about mismatched state or whatever. And then you can build a pill off of that desk, boot a new ship from it. Okay, so we got close, but Gall apparently doesn't have a zap call, and we are missing an on save. So we can start by adding a zap call. See if there's any zap dots in here. No. So we'll get an actual stack trace. I'll go ahead and now I'll get this started while I describe why I just did what I did. I shut down the peer and brought it back up because if you don't, then it would realize that Gall changed because I changed Gall, but it wouldn't realize that Zeus has changed because it tried to commit Zeus last time. And Zeus hasn't changed since the last time it tried to commit it. That's a bug, because Zeus didn't actually take, like the commit failed, and so it shouldn't have, marked Zeus as clean, as not committable. But that bug persists, and so shutting down the peer and bring it back up solves this problem because this is just a little cache in the runtime, and the runtime goes away when you take it down and bring it back up. So that's why I did that. It's a bit annoying that even though the problem is in Gall, I have to recompile Zeus each time. Actually, if I have more issues, what I'll do is I'll just change Zeus and have that recompile. Because the change there doesn't affect anything else, I don't think. Here I'm taking advantage of that bug to only recompile Zeus. It'll have to recompile everything below that, but it won't try to recompile the new version of those. Hopefully that works. It might not work, because there might be some types that needed that change. Regardless, I have a stack trace, 1832. Here on save from agent.yoke. Yeah, that doesn't work. Right, so this is we're running on save on all of them because we're about to. This is when Gall is upgrading, it takes its state and runs on save on all the apps so that it doesn't have to try to upgrade running applications, upgrade cores. It only has to upgrade, static data as a vase. And so this should be basically, and I'll do this in another variable. Oops. It's going to be it's a vase. So what name are we going to call it? Vase. And so it's going to be, might be able to do it one line. We'll see. Nah, this should be multiple lines. Okay, so if it's running, then run on save. If it's not running, on save from p.agent.yoke. If it's not running, then run. Then we've already run on save and just stored that, and so that's already a vase. This is, by the way, a useful example of the difference between dot and col. That is, technically the same. It produces different knock, but it ends up being the same. But that is not the same. I don't even know if that works. If it does, it probably it's probably something different. Like it would produce the function instead of running the function, whereas that runs the function. Okay, then what we have here is vase. Right, egg. So egg is the version of yoke that's used in the like the metamorphosis stage during upgrade. It's very similar, except that the old state is now just a vase. It can't be something running. And so that looks like it matches the types right. That should work fine. Not quite. It's close, but the problem is when you reload Gall in this circumstance, it'll keep it. Like, we've lost the information as to whether it is a as to whether it was dozing. And so it'll try to wake it up and try to compile it, which may not be what you want. It may not compile, in which case your update will fail. So what we actually need is to go back to egg, and old state is actually going to be in each of a vase and a vase. Arguably there should be actual tags here, but whatever. It's fine. And so here then it's now here, because they're compound statements, I actually kind of feel like this should actually be, I don't know, there's some sort of aesthetic sense that basically, because it's not just a simple limb or wing here, because there's an actual code, because it's an actual running code, that you wouldn't just use a pamless. That feels a little bit informal. And then here you could use a pamless, but you want to keep it in, parallel construction with this. So stylistically, that's what I would do. People certainly vary on that point. Okay, that should resolve that. So let's try this. Yeah, and committing just as use didn't work because the change that we made required an update to Gall. And it's the update to Gall that we need to, I could make a minimal change to Gall that would work with the new Zeus, and that would get Zeus and Ames, Bane, Clay, Dill, and Air out of my loop, but it's not worth it. You could also go into Clay and make Gall be the first vein that gets recompiled, because that order is just defined in Clay. Lots of ways to speed this up, and if you're making significant changes, they're usually worth it to spend a few minutes making your workflow, taking your workflow from a minute 90 seconds to compile versus 30 seconds to compile is a huge difference. And if you can get that down to more like 10, that makes a huge difference. And it's not the time, it's the fact that your brain doesn't wander off. You go check, the water cooler channel, and then you're gone. Okay. 1834 p.agent.yoke. That's weird. Satismic means it hasn't run yet, so we're working on our yokes, which have, don't really need this running. Wait, you're saying we can't find P in 1834-19 to... whoops. This is a function that defines the yoke. And if we're doing it this way, might as well make it look a little more formal. Cool. Let's try that again. And while that's compiling, we can think a minute about how would we stop rebuilding the app. I'm trying to remember what that cycle looks like when it's rebuilding the app. Let's see where the warps come from. So moboot has a warp, mosubscribe to agent builds has a couple of warps, fail from syscore has a warp, and moapply has a warp to a mark. That's something different. Poke as similar. So yeah. Handle aims response. That's also for a mark. This one's also for a mark. Right. Okay. So moboot is where it starts in the first place. That's not going to change. Mosubscribe to agent builds is potentially something we're going to have to worry about. But we have a new stack trace, 1836. We have a Lubian and we need a type. That's exciting. Did I forget to change egg? Let's see, 1836 is here. Right. This should be in each of vase and vase. People don't like it when I just do that. That's misleading. State, app state is a fine name. That'll work. Honestly, the way that it's factored now, good old cent is better. We just say agent, use queen side. That's better. Could cast it to in each vase if we want, but we really don't need to. Yeah, that feels clearer to me. Oftentimes, upgrade code has this very centis, the queenside centis sort of style, because and it's a centis, not a centcab, because we are changing the type. This is not a yolk anymore. This is an egg. And so, yeah, that looks clear to me. All right. Well, that's compiling. Core mode pass. Right. So fail is we received a build core from Clay, and then not this fail, these fails. So that's if we weren't able to build the agent for whatever reason, then we subscribe to it again, so that we try to, so that the next commit we try to start an agent again. Basically, if an agent failed to start because it failed to compile, then we want to try again. And so that's what this is doing. That's not going to change. The only ones that really matter, I think, are subscribe to agent builds, which I need to understand this life cycle. Who calls this? This is called in mo handle sys core, mo handle sys live. So mo handle sys core is maybe stack trace, but right. So mo handle sys core is the response you get when you first try to build an app, or if it fails, then the next time you try to build that app. Mo handle sys live is the notification you get when an already running app, its source code has changed, or rather the core that it compiles to has changed. Basically, the source code has changed. So both of those call mo subscribe to agents build at a particular time. Now this is in mo, not app, which means it doesn't have the context of a particular app, which means that I believe it's just going to go through our list of, it just goes through all our yokes and subscribes to them. Also subscribes to Hoon, Arvo, and Zeus, and Gall. So that, right, and then this is the last one saying, right, so if Hoon changes, Arvo changes, Zeus changes, Gall changes, or an app changes, then we want to scan for updates. So this we want to basically modify to say, don't do it if they're dozing. That should be an easy change, but let's look at our stack trace here. Okay, so we have what appears to be an agent core because it has 10 arms. Not very many things have 10 arms, and it takes what appears to be a bowl. But what we need is apparently in each of vase and vase, I think. And so this is on line 1074. Which is yoke agent p.res app but initialize agent state from egg. Right, so we changed the type of egg, but then egg actually got used somewhere, and we didn't I should look up where eggs is referred to here during the molting phase. We want to take those eggs, turn them into yolks. So we get eggs right there. We get the old state from the egg, pass it into app install. That's almost correct, but not quite. If it's dozing, we don't want to do that. Right? Yeah. Also, app but gets the egg, which it then uses to try to start. Right. So what we want to do basically, app but all it does is we compile the new core and then we install it. And we want app yoke, which initializes agent state from a yoke. Do we need to run that? Maybe? I don't know. Probably. I think we do. Yeah, we definitely do. So we need to still run app.but, but when we get here, we want to say this is a tis what of, no, wait, sorry, this was a tis faz, you can't tis what that. This is going to be either, so if it's dozing, if p.res, but no, that's not right. Just needs to go further up. We want to not even try to compile the core. Res only goes in here. Okay, then what we can do is say if it's dozing, hep dot old state dot egg, then it's just an egg. An egg is a yolk if it's dozing. If it's not dozing, then we want to compile the app and load that into the access location where old state is, although it's referred to as something else. But again, this is a send-tis because we're actually changing it from an egg to a yolk. So what we actually need though is Pam with that. Technically, actually, we already know it's Pam. And what we need to do is change p.oldstate to that. That type should infer through that just fine. And then it runs the rest of the initialization. There shouldn't be, right. That works fine, except that then the next line is call app install, which we don't want to do, I think, because app install is going to go ahead and say, oh, we had an old vase, let's run on load. We don't want to run on load because it's dozing. So we want to not run app install in that case, which means we need to wipe air subs. Huh. That we actually probably do want to do. It's, yeah, like presumably that's just saying if there's open air subscriptions, just like close them. It's not even worth trying to keep those open. That we do want to do. It doesn't depend on anything other than the subscription paths there. Upload delete. There might be an error there. Upload delete is going to, it's going to call on leave, which we can't be doing. We want to queue that up. I suspect, actually, I'm almost certain that this was a one-time piece of code meant to handle a particular upgrade. I wonder if I can check that somehow. Because if so, then I can ignore that. Maybe even just delete it. And that'll help. Let's see. Let's see. This comes from August. This commit. Forget error subscriptions once. Part of us that we need to clean up any that error didn't clean up. Since detecting it, we just wipe them all. Yeah, so this is just a one-time thing. Doesn't matter. Got some nice, that's pretty. Okay, then let's go ahead and ignore that because it's not going to actually fail. It would just be a runtime failure. Probably should delete it, that code, but for the moment I'll just leave it. And the only thing we need to skip then is this. This becomes more of a tis what. Because mean does, yeah. So this becomes tis what mocore. What is it saying? Right, so it's going to be p.oldstate. So we need to do check that hep.oldstate.egg.i.apps is Pam. And then we do this. That looks fine. If it failed, it failed. If it didn't fail, then we run, then we just produce mocore and keep going. Cool, cool, cool. That update to app core. Yeah, that's not right. This is app core that gets potentially updated. That's one of the few dangerous areas of Hoon. Well, not that few, but is that code would have worked fine, except that it would have dropped the changes to app core. Because we made changes to app core, but I saved mocore. It didn't save changes to app core. Oh well. But if it's app core, then it's fine. It'd be nice to have at least, I don't know. I mean, sure that you could do some static analysis to say, you seem to have updated this state in your subject and then thrown it away. Anyways. Should wipe air subs. .spore is, yeah. So it's definitely a band-aid that we can ignore. And I really should go ahead and delete it. I'll do that in a different diff, probably. Okay. I'll try and compile that. There's something else I'm missing. Well, right. I'm missing how do you wake up from a doze? It'll sort of automatically wake up from a doze if you rebuild the app. But it probably won't. I don't know if it'll run through its queued moves. The wake up logic needs to be written. Okay, while that's compiling, we had just identified where to stop rebuilding the apps. It was in this. We were saying, don't just do it. We actually need to look in. So instead of just looking at the app names, we actually need the whole apps. We need to tap by. And so then we need dap and yoke. And then we say, actually needs to be a mern. And it's a unit that. And then if send Pam, well, if send, basically if we're dozing, hep.agent.yoke, then null, else, yes. Okay. Another stack trace in 8.15. There's a mint vein. Between 8.15 and 24. I just added a couple of lines. What was it before these? Okay, 8.15 was here. Okay. So it's saying that can't be a bar, which is correct. But hep.that can be a bar. And I didn't restart the ship, which is why, you know, if you go to 1784, you'll notice that's talking about basically the fade task not being correct. The other thing you'll find in 1784 is America in some amount of disarray under the Articles of Confederation. Okay, so then back to here. That should work. I just committed it, so if it fails, we'll see it. But that, yeah, that should say we're only going to be subscribed to the apps that we care about. Okay, I think that's written. I'm marking these as done based on having written the code, not having tested it. And here's Gall. Try to guess what this is. Looks like a deal or something. Map of deals or some such. Let's look at the line numbers. Actually going to be more interesting. There's a wet gate thing here where basically what we're putting into blocked is probably not actually what blocked is. So let's see. Blocked is a blocked move, right? Yeah. Map term queue blocked move, but blocked itself is actually just a queue of it's a queue of blocked moves. Which is going to be this. What's agent here? Agent appears to be the name of the agent. And then we're putting in is supposed to be a queue of blocked moves, and then putting in something that is supposed to be a queue of blocked moves, so let's take a glance at what these types actually are. This is saying it's either null or a map, whereas this is saying what we have is a core, I think. Plus a map. Strange. (24 to 63). It's saying the error is here, but that might possibly be coming from the send cab. Okay, so this is definitely a queue of blocked moves because we cast to it. And block.state is supposed to be a map of term to queue of blocked moves. Do I have another definition of blocked somewhere? Okay, let me look at those types again. So there's an R, there's an NLR, there's an L, is a L, R. Saying it's either a null or a non-null map. I mean, it's saying it's a map. And it's saying that what we have is not a map. What we have is a... What is this? It looks like a pair of a core and a map. What's this core? I think agent must not be correct. You know what I'll bet? Oh, yeah. It's possible that I introduced that, but okay, there are some downsides to using type names as variable names. One of which is that something like this would only get evaluated at runtime, but agent there is referring to the agent core instead of the agent name. I mean, really, the pattern is they never should have used agent as the name of the agent, because that's like, if you have a type and you have a variable of the same type, you'd expect that variable to be of that type, but that would not be the case here. Anyways, the solution is simple, to just find the places where we do reference agent, change them to DAP. I don't know why it's called DAP. It's been called DAP for a really long time. I think it predates, I have to check, but I think it might predate the plebeian usage of DAP as a decentralized app. But now it feels like we're just like, oh, our applications are decentralized, so we'll call them dApps. Oh well. Okay. Then so we stopped rebuilding the app. We believe the wake up logic. Where should the wake up logic go? Should it just be call start again, or is it another tag to fade? Could be a tag on fade. That's probably the best, actually. Well, we have another stack trace. Minvain 803. Again, it's hep.agent that can be a sendbar. So our wake up logic is, if we put that in a tag on send fade, then it's gone, doze, wake. Recompiling Zeus every time, why not change it, you know? Then app fade needs to handle and also mo fade. Another big type signature in 853, which again is going to be a little bit off. Can I guess from, let's see, 5 to 26? Actually, it looks like it's the same. No, it can't be that. Can it? It could. Because the app fade stuff is, and the mo fade stuff is all after that. Yeah, so it is just this. That's weird. Okay, so 853, 5 to 26. It's saying that that is not a. Is this just an S fail? Or maybe we have something more specific here. This is clearly the type of moves. I think it's saying basically that the move type is not correct. That was the need. Have is usually somewhat shorter. But, or wait, I can just search for this. Okay, yeah, Jeunesse fail. I don't know if this. I mean, card might as well just be called card, right? That may not be correct. Let's see. I'll get this compiling while I verify a little more of this. If you just refer to card, what do you get? You get, I don't know, maybe some, no, okay, if there is a card in, it's not that. It would be node arvo plus something? Do we have a move defined in here? No. Don't have any of this. Yeah, not really. We have to have move defined somewhere, right? Okay, we have move defined here. Okay, we can at least do this. The card should be. That's probably sufficient to give us the information we need. My guess is that I'm using Huck wrong. Let's check. Huck sine arvo. Sine arvo. Yeah, would take a send G. It's a little weird that it expects. Oh, also, it's going to come in as a heck. Oh, yeah. I forgot that change happened. Did I update the right thing? No, I didn't. Okay, so it is a sine arvo. Gall, gift able Gall, gift able Gall. That's not right. Unto? That's not right. No, wait, it is. Yeah, we're getting a response from Gall. And so in Gall, we could get an unto with a sign agent. p.move in this case should be a sign agent because because move here confusingly was defined here, which is it means that tis move is gonna fail. It's a blocked move. There's allowed to be 2 lines. I mean, it is a tis blocked move for that matter. That makes it clearer to think about. What? Oh, no, it's not. It's not a tis blocked move. It's actually called move in the definition of blocked move, which is, let's call it blocked. No, blocker. That'll be fine. Which is each deal sign agent. So pass B huck G. Need a. It's a pass. I need a wire. Doesn't matter what the wire is. It's coming back. Does it matter what the wire is? Doesn't matter what the wire is because this comes back as a heck, right? Goes back as a heck on. Okay. What's in a heck again? Just assign Arvo. Yeah, it's not gonna matter. I think we have heck handling somewhere else. Like here, for example. If it's a heck, then we go ahead and just say, okay, forget about what's on the wire. We just want to treat it as a sign. That's fine. Okay, so, doesn't matter. Give it a tag because I'm allergic to tagless stuff when you could have put something there because it'll always show up in a trace somewhere. Even if it's just a verb trace. Verb trace gives you something that you can grep. Clear huck. Does it mean anything? No, but it can be grepped. Okay, let's try that. Blocker. Yeah. All right, then slip G deal socked up B blocker. Cool. Send fade. There, right. So Mo fade when it gets awake is actually probably not going to want to do anything. I think it's app fade that is going to need to run app install or something like that. Actually, that might need to be triggered from Mo. App reinstall is the one that needs to be called. Currently, we run app reinstall from Mo receive core. Oh, we don't need to. Oh, but that actually already has the agent, which is an actual agent here, not like the name of it. Okay. So then, this is from Mo receive core. We might be best off actually just in Mo sending something off to Clay. That's probably the right move. But let's check the stack trace we have. 852. I thought I fixed that already. Oh, right there. That's the danger of using a 50 column terminal. Usually I'm like, this is on a giant 4K monitor. Well, like, I don't know, 40 inches or something. And so usually I have this way zoomed out. But I still only keep it to like 65, 70 columns per column. And that way I can have 8 or 9 columns open comfortably. Okay, well, that's working. Mo receive, or let me make sure this is the only. So app reinstall is called there, and that's it. App reinstall itself calls app install. Yeah, so what we want to do then is say who calls Mo receive core. That gets called from either Mo sys core or Mo sys live. I think what we want to do is Mo sys core. That's the flow for starting an app. And in particular, it has things like, oh, the app failed to start, but we want to keep going without making any changes. That's the kind of thing that we want to do when you're waking up from a doze. Okay, Gall 271. Yeah, these are not quite going to work. They're going to be close. Less dot, because we know at this point that that's wrong. I don't want to write state adapters right now. Less dot will work. But I'll put in something. It should be state 5 should be changed. Close enough. Okay, so Mo handle sys core is it parses this out and it says, okay, well, didn't build. It built something that wasn't a vase for some reason. It built something that was a vase, but it wasn't actually an agent. And so I couldn't. And so we can't install that. Or else we Mo receive core and Mo subscribe to agent builds. In this case, we don't do anything except that as well. Okay, so Mo receive core is where we're just at. It checks to see if it's existing. It's very nice about whether something exists. It'll even tell you whether something's loading or reloading. And that's what ends up eventually getting to app reinstall. Just right there. Cool. Okay, so we just need to get to Mo receive core, which comes from Mo sys core. So we need to somehow trigger Mo handle sys core, which is we can probably do via scribe, but we don't really want to do that. What we actually want to do is say, well, we have a stack trace. Still don't have it on save. In 276 of Gall. Okay, what is y? Y is a yoke 0. Close these for the moment so I can see this. Right. It's a yoke 0. That's a yoke 0. Which is listed as any agent. Nice. Nice. Oh, that's fine. That had an on save. Should be just that. Why did it... The error before was that it didn't have an on save. What does this produce? A spore 6. That's a strange syntax. I should have some backlog of this. This was 271 and 276. Yeah. The error here was not what I thought it was. The error here is that what we have is a map of some stuff. What we need is a map of slightly different things. What we actually need is a state adapter. But without a state adapter, what it's saying is that we need this. That's what the state adapter needs to do. But I think it'll work to just do it here. Is there something beyond yoke 0? No, there's no. It just becomes a yoke, and so that's why it needs the PAM plus. Because it's becoming after this a spore 6. Spore 6 is defined as whatever is the spore in spore 7. I think is what that's saying, which is defined as whatever's spore, and spore as egg. And egg has old state, and so where it had agent becomes, right, because this is state 5 to spore 6. So this is the adapter from way back when, from the original Ford Fusion upgrade, where it went from just states to having this spore state ping pong, because of the molting process introduced in Ford Fusion. Okay. Hopefully that should get us past that. The other thing we're looking at is how to get to a core. It comes from generally fail or boot. But that's trivial enough, we could probably build it ourselves. Actually, we could probably just call mo boot, I think. These are doing the same thing, right? This one does next, and that one does sing. But other than that, they're the same, right? Syscore dap her desk Scott case. Syscore dap ship desk Scott case. Basically, just need to call mo boot to verify that. If you look at like reboot, for example, which is what Go does, it just calls mo boot. Cool. Okay. Great. So we got to load lost, which means that we can actually, that means it compiled and it only failed to load because we didn't write a state adapter. And so now we can just commit that to our work desk. So I'm going to change my rsync into work, unmount home. You don't technically have to unmount home, but there's a bug where if you have more than one thing mounted, it'll commit them all anytime you commit any of them, which can be annoying. Okay, so commit work, clay building Zeus on work. Once that's done, we can make a pill out of that. Boot that. Should basically work. Except that, of course, dozing apps, you can't restart them because we haven't written that yet. But we should be able to just call mo boot from mo fade. Wait, so app fade doesn't need to do anything. And then, okay, let's, oops. Gosh, I forgot the syntax. Okay, it's just an argument, not an optional argument. Or not a formally optional argument. I think it's that. Yeah, okay. It has been too long. Yeah, I did upgrade the mic from last time. There's a bunch of like podcasting mics, but I don't. Well, first of all, they were like sold out and whatever, and I was like, whatever. So I just used. This is just a Shure SM58, like bog standard cardioid, not even condenser mic. What's the other one called? Dynamic mic. It's just a vocalist singer's mic, which I'm much more comfortable with. Not speaking into one. I don't sing or anything like that, but I have done a lot of what's it called, like live sound system work, mostly for my church, and so these mics just make sense to me. That should compile reasonably soon. Okay, so we need the app name, which is this. Ship. Our Shirley. Yeah. And desk is going to be home. Do we have that information in the yoke somewhere or something? I think we only really support home at this point. Yeah, we definitely only support home. So I think that should basically work. should be able to boot that pill, and then our cycle time should get a lot faster. I think that's correct for wake up. Let's see. We'll try it. Probably shouldn't have deleted the previous fake sod, but it's fine. That's the other thing is when your cycle time is long, I tend to mark things as done when I've written them and not when they work. But if the cycle time is short, then I wait until I've finished at least manually testing it, and then I mark it done. One of the many reasons to try to make your cycle time as short as possible. Okay, so mo boot. So I'm going to want to sync this into home going forward, although home doesn't exist. But it will. Let's see. I mean, we traced through all that. That should work. Okay, let's mount home. See if I can commit the new changes. See, I don't have to compile Zeus or names Bane, Clay, Dill, Air. So it's just Gall and then recompile the apps. Bam. Also loading graph pull hook for some reason. That's weird. It started a couple apps for some reason. But that's fine. I'll bet you they're in the one half of Drum and not the other. Drum has defines your startup apps, and it also defines your upgrade apps. But we didn't upgrade anything that Drum would have seen. I don't know what caused that to happen. But it doesn't matter. Okay. Let's try starting graph store. And then let's try I'm going to try out the pass generator. Hood pass. So it just takes a node arvo, which is going to be node arvo is going to be the name of the vein. Okay, so it's bar pass send g send fade, I think, right? Yeah, send fade graph store gone. Let's see if we can just nuke it. Nest need. It's this. Yeah. Gall not running graph store yet. Got watch. That's because one of those hooks is running. Hashtag dibtux says Drum unconditionally starts those on load. Oh, that's what's happening, right? So I booted it with -L, which starts almost none of the apps, only the ones that are critically needed to like get it going. And so Drum got reloaded for whatever reason. Well, it got reloaded because everything got reloaded because Gall got reloaded, and so it started those two apps. That makes sense. Since they are running, when I faded graph store, I did it with Gone, which is not the one we've been working on. It's the one that was written ahead of time. that goes and kills all the subscriptions. So graph pull hook, graph push hook are like, okay, well, whichever one was subscribed to it, probably just one of them, said, oh, you kicked the subscription, I'm going to go ahead and resubscribe. And so Gall's like, oh, well, Graph Store, I don't know anything about Graph Store. I've never seen Graph Store in my life. And so it says it's not running, got watch, which means it queues that up for whenever you do run it again, which is actually basically the correct behavior. Okay, that is encouraging. It's honestly probably worth running through that on ooh. Yeah, I should have done this through bar fade. It's fine. I can fix it this way too. Actually, it's easy enough. So I should start up Graph Store again and do that under bar verb, make sure everything looks right. Okay, so Pascal conf Graph Store. Hood bad wire. Because we got a response back that we didn't expect. What we need to do is throw these away. If it's okay, so this is alib hood helm is where I put the pass one, right? Or poke pass. And so that goes in as faz pass. What it should go as really is as like helm pass. And then if we get to take arvo here, if we get, I think I did that wrong. Yeah, it should be helm faz pass. And then it should be here, if we get any response from a pass, we just want to, print out who it came from, right? The vein and the tag of the response. And that's all we really can safely print. And then produce whatever we are expected to produce, which is whatever flog produces, whatever emit produces. It's this. That should work. I wonder if that killed the whole event. It shouldn't have. Okay, so 113, and then something else happened. But I think the important thing was here. Reloading agents hood 113.16 need send one, have something that is not send one. I'm not sure that this is defined in the same place. Wait, so I'm saying whatever take bound produces, or take wait, yeah, so whatever take bound produces is correct. Take bound is flog. Flog is emit. Emit produces this. this should be correct. So between 16 and 74 of 113 in hood. We run C and show them that's produces helm.state. I don't really like helm.state is not like it's that. It's not this. It's okay. Take arvo from helm core. Maybe I'm misreading this. What is take wake auth? Take wake automass. See, that's gotten a bet. That makes sense. Why doesn't take bound have an abet? Oh, it does. Hoot. Again, the downsides of, that 40 column life. But also, a bet shouldn't go at the end of a line, in my opinion. I have seen this style before, but it's not. It's sometimes used in this file. Okay, a bet is the answer to that. This is going into home. Okay, something got screwed up with the at the runtime there. Or I'm not saving the thing I think I'm saving. It seems to be giving the same errors. This is definitely going into home. From 13, 16 to 74, but I mean, I bet call this, right? It's the same thing. There's no. Let me make sure this is actually pulling in my changes. If it's still at 113, then it's not. Oh, I don't know what happened there, but it worked. Just gotta try it a few more times. Somehow it wasn't pulling in that change. Okay. Then my guess is that it actually did start. Graph store pam debugged that. Sorry, lost debug. Right. So that's running. Okay, then I can make it disappear. Again, I forgot to verb it, but I should be able to just make it reappear with that. Pass response. I got an onto because when you start an app, you get an acknowledgement from Gall. Cool, cool, cool. Okay, then let's try the same thing again. We'll kill graph store. So when we kill graph store, it goes. This is just parsing the keystrokes. And then now we get to the point where we're actually handling a pass. Where did this happen? Should have been a fade. What's happening here? This feels out of order. But regardless, somehow we get to fade. And then Gall is like, oh, well, then I know someone who's subscribed to me. Graph push hook is subscribed to me, so I'll kick them. And then graph push hook is like, well, if you're going to kick me but not give me negative watch ack, then I'm going to resubscribe. And that's a causal change. It happens right in order. But Gall is like, well, I already forgot about graph store. And then that's the just output through the drum. It looks good. All right. Then we can turn verb off and start graph store again. And then we see if we can do the doze. Probably should have verb on for that. But okay, so now we do graph store. Let's debug. Graph store not running yet, got poke. But if I wake it up, you'll notice when I dozed, it didn't, graph pull hook still thinks it's subscribed to it. But when I wake it up, which hopefully works, doze, what's the other one? Wake. Then pass response onto. Woohoo, we got an onto. Probably shouldn't have that. It's fine, but it's not ideal. That poke should have drained. Regardless, I can. It still thinks it's not running. Yeah, so the Mobu thing didn't work. Wake didn't give us back our graph store, presumably. It's possible that it's now running in a sense. And then it's just that because it has a blocked move, you remember it says if we have blocked moves or it's not running, then we in queue. And so since it has a blocked move, it might be in queuing. We need to do that sequence under verb. So doze, just in case it actually was, bar verb, and then do this under, right, so then do wake. That time it says reloading. I think it said it last time too, actually. Yeah, it did. Okay, so it does go ahead and do the syscore, and then it's like, okay, I have it, so I'll run it, and it works fine. Get another onto, but it doesn't clear the queue. Mo receive core we should have gotten to, but we didn't clear the queue because we were already existing. So what we need to do is mo clear queue, see if this is something that we can do even if we already exist. I think we can. Because the changes made are to block.state, get to blocked, right. Reinstall the app core. And then abet that into our state, and then mo clear queue. That actually is a mo core that we can just produce. Cool. Okay, that compiled. Now we want to not gone. Doze and wake. Bam! It got the enqueued pokes, which made it print out its state because that's what LustDebug does. So on some level that works. On some, up to obviously testing signs and such, make sure that hucking flow works. But basically, that's a reasonable way to suspend an application, and then it comes back out. Just needs an ISO generator. But yeah, wake up seems to work. Let me make sure that I can still send something to it. That's yeah, I can send stuff to it and it responds immediately. Okay. Let me look through this flow real quick. Yeah, see, we slip a couple deals to ourselves of the ones that were in the queue. That's fine. I think this is good. That leaves then generator for doze. I have one for fade already. Fix the reused ducks in gone, and then see if there's a way to mitigate those risks. But once I do those two things, it's probably good enough to put as a draft PR. Yeah. Okay. I think I'm gonna wrap up for tonight. I want to let that digest a little bit before I actually clean it up for a PR. I don't know when I'll next get a chance to spend time on this, because as I mentioned at the beginning, this isn't really my highest priority. This is just I need to be coding because I haven't been coding for weeks. But whenever I do get around to it, it should be just those couple things. And then we get to arguing the PRs about whether those risks make it reasonable. I mean, one reasonable response would be to say, okay, we'll just take away the generators and say, okay, if you really want to kill an app for now, until we think more clearly about this, if you really want to suspend an app or kill an app, then you need to know how to use bar pass, and it's going to be a little bit of it's going to be the kind of command you can't remember, which is the sort of barrier that is useful to help people not chop their hands off. And then we just need to make desks into sort of semi-materialized views of merges instead of actually doing the merges. And then you can do reasonably safe third-party software distribution. So I'm happy with the progress today. I'll save this, commit this. This is in the Philip/fade branch, which you can just get to on the Urbit repository. Oh, the other thing I need to do is state adapters. If I happen to get this done soon, then it's tempting to just put this in with the breach, because then you don't have to write a state adapter. But the state adapter for this is not hard, right? we just changed a couple places in the state. It's not a hard one. Gall is always a pain because it has both the spores and the state. It has this metamorphosis phase that's a pain to work with, but it'll be fine. Okay, cool. Then I think I will sign off. This has been useful for me. It's always useful to say what I'm doing out loud. It's like pair programming with the world. And maybe a little less input, but still get a lot of advantages. All right. I think that Twitch will keep this around for a couple of weeks. We'll see. I think I also have it recorded. All right. Yeah, I'll see you guys later.